Hello again and welcome back to Eating Smart, Being Active. I'm Donna Kirkendall from Central State University Extension. I'm a nutrition educator and thanks for taking time to tune in. In today's episode, we will talk about fat, sodium, and sugar. In today's world, we know that these are the things that we like in our diet. If you don't remember anything else, I want you to remember the takeaway is moderation. So I'm not going to tell you to throw away your crackers, your cookies, your butter, but I'm going to tell you to consume them in moderation. I like to call these the three amigos because they are always present in our diets each and every day and lots of the foods that we eat. However, the 2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans tell us to limit these, all three of these. And when we closely examine these, we know that there is a direct correlation to blood pressure, to diabetes, and also to heart disease. So when we take a close look at these, we will be taking a very good positive step in addressing these chronic diseases and also decreasing our likelihood at the onset of these diseases. So first up is fat. Not all fat is the same. I have some examples here, but what I want you to know is that they come in different categories. We have monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, we have saturated, and we have trans fats. What we do is that we want to remember that we want to choose these fats more often than we choose the saturated and the trans. The key to remember is that monounsaturated and polyunsaturated are liquid at room temperature. So they're commonly used when we fry things, when we use these for oils, we use these oils for dressings, or when we saute, or even when we put a little bit in our baking items. These would be okay to have, and they're healthier overall than the saturated and the trans. We know that the saturated and the trans would be the ones that are solid at room temperature. So here we go with our butter. So butter undoubtedly adds a lot of flavor, and that's a good thing. No one wants their food to be bland. But keep in mind, there are other alternatives to enhancing the flavor of our food. So we want to be mindful to keep this limited. Other examples would include coconut, which is really kind of like all the rage right now. But keep in mind, this is one that we do want to limit. We can use them in sparingly when we talk about using them in the foods that we prepare. The other common other common fats that we have are the trans fats. These are also solid at room temperature, but you will find these mostly in commercially packaged foods. So that would be our cakes, our cookies, those would be our chips, our pies, those loved biscuits on Saturday or Sunday morning, and then also the pizza crust that we have on Friday night. So we want to keep those definitely in limited quantities. Going back though, but taking a step back, the foods that have healthy fats would be things like avocados. They would also be our peanut butter and our nuts. Those are great sources of some really healthy fats, but again, we need to keep those in moderation. When we talk about nuts, we want to just keep it to a handful, maybe 15 to 20, 25, no more than that. We don't want to just kind of scoop them up and just kind of go all in, which is really easy to do because they're a small food item. But again, moderation is the key. Other foods that contain the polyunsaturated fats would be things like salmon, would be your walnuts, your sunflower seeds, your tofu, and also the flax seeds. And we use a lot of flax seeds when it comes to smoothies, or we can sprinkle them on our breakfast cereals. So they're a great source of fat and a healthy fat. When we talk about the saturated and the trans fat, we look at foods such as our sausages, our bacon, which we do love quite often. We talk about our hot dogs. These are definitely foods that you want to eat in moderation. They're kind of like our fun foods. So like when you go to a baseball game or a football game and you have those concession snacks, you want to keep those to a minimum. Also, when we're at home and we're preparing foods like fried chicken or turkey, they serve to, of course, enhance the flavor, but you want to mitigate that and then consider sometimes removing the skin off of the chicken and off of the turkey. When you cook it with the skin on, you will enhance the flavor, but to remove it, you would definitely be decreasing the fat. Other ways in which we want to mitigate the fat would be to broil or to grill our foods, and then of course to bake our foods. So next up is the amigo of sugar. So with sugar, we know that it has a direct correlation to diabetes, but also heart disease, and then also in limited ways to hypertension. We have sugar that is notorious in a lot of the foods that we have, but also really prevalent is in the drinks that we consume. When we think about drinking, we think about hydration, but we never really think about the calories that we have in drinks. But sugar is one of those things that enhances flavors and makes us feel good, but the downside to that is that it can cause tooth decay in young children. It can also lead to cavities in older Americans, older adults. It can cause weight gain. So one of the ways in which we want to reduce sugar is to consider choosing water more often. If water is kind of like a bummer for us because we can't really get with the taste, we want to do some things to enhance the flavor. One key ingredient to enhance the flavor of water would be fruit. Just a slice of lemon, a slice of lime, even some berries will go a long way. Another thing that we want to do is we want to eat cakes and cookies less often. We want to make some really healthy substitutes and use some fruit instead of some cakes or some pies. You know, we can have a dollop of yogurt to kind of sweeten it, a flavored yogurt, but that will go a long way in reducing our intake of sugar. We also want to look at choosing healthy desserts and then also snacks. So when we're on the go, consider a fruit instead of a packaged good. Even if you were to prepare a cookie or muffin at home, you will go a long way in reducing the sugar that you would have each day. When we talk about sugar in drinks, we want to keep in mind that serving size can be very deceptive. These are kind of like grab-and-go bottles. We find them easily in the convenience store, and of course in the grocery store. They come with a cap, so we just grab it. If we drink some, we can return the cap to it, and then we go. But one of the things that we don't consider is the amount in this. When we have a 20-ounce bottle, we don't consider how much sugar is in this one beverage. When we measure the amount of sugar, we want to look at the total number of grams on a nutrition facts label and divide that by 4. And then that tells us how many teaspoons. So if you can take a guess, in these common 20-ounce bottles, we have upwards of 17 teaspoons of sugar. And I've got these right here. And a teaspoon is what looks like this. And so that is one reason that we consume a lot of our calories by the sugary drinks that we consume. The next big culprit in our diet is salt. Salt is something that we need to have in our diet to help our organs function, to maintain electrolyte balance. But too much salt does lead to those chronic conditions such as high blood pressure, hypertension, and then of course also diabetes. The USDA tells us that we need to limit our daily salt intake to 2,300 milligrams, and that's in a complete day. And so when we look at common foods that have salt, we look at things like chicken or vegetable stock. We also look at canned ingredients, canned vegetables. We can use, again, our packaged crackers, pretzels, and then also some canned meat. So we want to look at our nutrition facts label and identify where the sodium is. Generally speaking, a product that contains 20 or more % of that nutrient of salt will be considered high. So when we take a look at our sardines, and you know, sardines will be a heart-healthy item, but on the flip side, we want to think moderation, because this one contains 530 milligrams of sodium. So that comes in at 23%. So it's kind of tipping the scale, and it's up there. when we look at the sodium in chicken broth. And we commonly use this, as I mentioned in another lesson, to kind of flavor our grains. But at the same time, when we use these during the holidays for our gravies and our other things, we can easily go through this 23-ounce container. But when we read the serving size, we only see that it is a cup. And in this one container, there are 4 cups. So then we want to look at how much sodium is in that 1 cup. And this sodium value comes in at 510, which is 22%. So that kind of helps us keep us in perspective about how much sodium we consume each day. So what else can we use instead of salt to enhance the flavor of our foods? One of those things that we want to look at are the herbs and spices. We want to use fruit or the zest of fruit. So limes and lemons are great substitute to enhance the flavor of our food. The big takeaway is moderation. We don't want to kill all of the food that we have with it having no flavor, no salt, no sugar, no fat. But we want to keep it in moderation. We want to consume more healthier fats than unhealthy fats. So definitely butter in moderation. We want to be sure that we keep in a respectable serving size of sugary drinks. We don't want to consume them often. We want to enhance the flavor of our water because our water is going to hydrate us. And then when it comes to sodium, we definitely want to be sure that we're keeping with the serving size of even packaged ingredients and then what we consume in the way of canned vegetables and broths. Thanks so much for joining us today.